Well, hello, folks. So there's been another dev stream, and I'm gonna make another video just covering the entirety of the dev stream and like everything they talked about, because there's a lot of stuff to talk about. But one thing in particular that I wanted to highlight first of all, just to get ahead of the narrative, as it were, and just make sure that some talking points don't get to spread too far before they're challenged, and that is what Pablo said, that self-damage might be coming back to the game.
So with AoE, we're still looking at it, and we're not going to have a huge solution anytime soon. I think last dev stream we said, all right, here's what we're going to do, and here's what we might do if what we do isn't enough. And what we did, of course, is ammo, and then we also buffed the whole headshots, all that stuff. And when you mentioned that, yeah, and then we'll maybe self-CC will come back. That was the one thing players don't.
Yeah.
But then there was self-damage, and there's still a path we are experimenting with internally on bringing self-damage back. Internally, we're looking at it, and I think that's probably the most we're looking in for AoE right now.
In fact, we saw several comments that were they prefer the self-damage compared to the self-CC. So that got us thinking, because the problem right now is you can ignore the self-CC once you reach day 400. So if the self-CC is really that bad, then probably should change it in general versus just leave it for players below day 400 and then keep it for above. Now we know self-damage as it existed had a lot of problems, so we're trying a new version. And again, this is just something we're testing in dev. Might never make it to the live build. It might make it to the live build. We don't know. But basically what we're trying is we're removing the self-CC. We're changing the self-damage to be percent-based. So basically you cannot one-shot yourself. If you shoot at yourself at your feet, you take 75% of your health. If you shoot 10 meters away, you take 25% or something like that. It should feel scary if you blow a missile in front of your own face. That's it. You should really feel like there's you did bad. You should.
Yeah. No friendly fire, and you can't completely one-shot yourself.
Yeah.
Percent-based where the percent is not 100.
And the case on the range of the explosion, and the range itself of the explosion is smaller for self-damage than it is for damage. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of things that we're trying right now. Again, we're not committing to doing that. It's just something we're experimenting with right now.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to tell you this right away, people. Self-damage is coming back to the game. Straight up. I am guaranteeing it. I think self-damage was always coming back to the game. I think when they did the initial tweaks and they fixed... They decreased blast radius and changed how ammo works and decreased ammo pickups and ammo capacity for AoE weapons. They said at that point, previous dev stream, they said that they still had self-damage and looking at self-stagger and stuff like that in the back pocket. Now what this is that they're planting a seed. They're letting people know that this is on their agenda, so it doesn't come out of nowhere. They did say that they were going to see if the changes they made had enough of an impact, and maybe they could let it just slide and be where it was. My prediction back then, which is exactly what happened, my prediction was that it's not going to impact the meta at all. That the changes to ammo and the changes to blast radius and stuff like that, not nearly impactful enough, and we're still going to be an AoE meta. AoE weapons are still going to be far, far superior to any sort of single target weapons, which is exactly what happened. So what this update actually did, what it actually achieved, was basically a precision strike against 3 weapons in particular, that being the Kuva Ogris, the Kuva Brahma, and the Kuva Tsar. These weapons were all severely hurt by the ammo in particular changes, so that they're not as viable. But that's just 3 weapons. There's still so many other AoE weapons in the game, and being able to nuke an entire room is still the most viable strategy. That did not change. single target weapons are not suddenly like a viable option to AoE weapons. And sort of like this is something where they painted themselves into a corner. Because if you look at, you know, how this started with the Kuva Brahma. History lesson here, people, for those who might not have been playing the game so long and maybe weren't playing during the time when self-damage was in the game. Self-damage was in the game, and it was actually something that held AoE weapons in check. A lot of weapons that did have like big blast radius or whatever were not considered viable because you just killed yourself too often when you used them. And there were some exceptions, like the Tonkor or whatever, but this actually did keep the meta in check. Like even the Exceltra, we'll get to the Exceltra, but the point is, the first sort of thing they did to make AoE weapons somewhat usable was they made a mod called Cautious Shot that you buy from the arbitration store. It used to say that it reduced the damage from self-imposed radial attacks. So this was a mod that could reduce self-damage. And at maximum, I haven't even maxed this one out because I never used it, because I prefer to have other stuff in the Exilo slot. But at maximum, it is a 90% reduction. No, even 100% now for stagger effects. But when it was damage, when it was self-damage, it was 90%. So, that's what Cautious Shot used to be. Everything was fine and dandy. Some weapons, like the Exceltra for example, it's got such ammo economy issues that you just can't put in Cautious Shot. You have to have rifle ammo mutation or like hunter munitions. I mean vigilante supplies. Or it's just not gonna work. But it was good for some other weapons. Then came the Kuva Brahma, and for some reason, like, Cautious Shot just didn't work on the Kuva Brahma. I don't know why, but it just didn't. So it was a popular weapon, but it was also a weapon where you killed yourself pretty often when you used it. And people were sort of like complaining about this and asking for this to change. And this was like just this was a situation where you should not have listened to the complaints. They should have left the Kuva Brahma as it was. But the solution for this, apparently, was to just remove self-damage entirely from the game and replace it with self-stagger. Now, self-stagger is extremely disruptive to a gameplay experience, to the point where people actually prefer self-damage over self-stagger. Yeah, sometimes you'll occasionally one-shot yourself, but everyone knows, like, you just don't have primed sure-footed, you shoot a weapon, you stand too close to it, and you get that little stagger animation, and it sucks. It just disrupts your gameplay. You don't enjoy it. It not good serotonin feel bad. It feel bad, and feel bad gameplay is obviously not something we want. They had some other stuff before they removed self-damage, like for example the Exceltra. The Exceltra and the Acarius, they came with the minimum distance arming thing, right? If you shoot with the Exceltra and your enemy is too close, then the rockets won't explode, which means it does like less damage and stuff, but on the flip side, you won't kill yourself. There's an interesting mechanic. You could still kill yourself if you were like shooting while aim gliding and you were like traveling at basically the same distance as the projectile. Then you could kill yourself when you landed. That happened a bunch of times. So when you played the Exceltra, you had to learn to like not aim glide forward while you were shooting. You could aim glide to the sides and backward, but if you aim glided forward and shot the Exceltra, you had a very high chance of killing yourself with it. Which made the weapon a bit skill testing for being an AoE weapon. If you made a mistake, you died. If you didn't make a mistake, it was a good weapon. Same thing happened with, like, for example, the Lens was also a big AoE bow. You shot with it, and it takes a while for the arrow, when it lands, it takes a while for it to explode. So even if you were, like, oh, you shot bad, and now you're standing inside where it's gonna detonate, you have an opportunity to escape. If you're fast, you can get out of there before it explodes. Again, skill testing weapon. The Kuva Brahma was a bit too random in this. Things were just like projectiles flying in every direction. It was very hard to control where the explosions were going to happen. So the Kuva Brahma, you were killing yourself pretty often with it. That was the trade-off. That was the drawback for the extreme power of this weapon. It's dangerous to use. But people wanted to use it without any danger. And they listened to it, and the result was that they just removed self-damage entirely from the game. Now, I am one of the people, for a long time, I have been advocating that self-damage should come back to the game. I have advocated that removing self-damage from the game was a mistake. And I know there are some people out there who are like, why? Why would you want to do that? Why would you want self-damage to return? This isn't a PvP game, this is a PvE game. I want a pleasurable experience. I want a power fantasy. I don't want to accidentally kill myself. I want Warframe to be a horde shooter, and I just want to explode entire rooms because that makes you feel good. All of that stuff. Here's the thing. I don't agree. I don't agree. Like, we have a power fantasy, okay? You know what? You know, I'm gonna tell you another game that is a power fantasy. Devil May Cry. That game is a power fantasy. However, it is a power fantasy that is completely dependent on your own skill as a player. If you're skilled at playing it, you feel like the most powerful being in the entire universe, and the gameplay reinforces that. We're just, like, everyone is afraid of you. But if you don't know how to play it, you're just gonna die and eat shit. Now, obviously I'm not saying that Warframe has to be on that difficulty level of a Devil May Cry, or a Dark Souls, or whatever. But it doesn't have to be like Dynasty Warriors either. It doesn't have to be a brainless horde shooter. There are things in between here. We don't have to choose between Devil May Cry or Dynasty Warriors. There's a spectrum here. It doesn't have to be zero challenge or all challenge. We can end up somewhere in between, and that's going to be just fine. Now, where we're at today, and the reason why they are making these changes to AoE, they have said that they are looking at 3 criterion for it. The 3 criterion are if it's disruptive to other players, if it's dominant, so that like that's the only thing that's being played and nothing else is even being touched, and finally, most important here, if it's automated, right? If it's a game that just sort of like plays itself. And that's where the real problem is for me. Now, obviously, the disruptive part, that was a thing with Wukongs, with Kuvazars, and the entire screen is just a mass of explosions. They kill everything and they're faster than you, and you can't like even play the game if you're in a group. You just feel useless. That's the disruptive part. The automated part is obviously also a thing with Wukong, with the clone, and how the clone just kills everything for you. And it's a game that sort of plays itself. And also where you don't even have to look at where you're shooting. You can just walk forward and shoot at the ground with your big room explodey thing, and you're gonna beat the entire mission that way. And the dominant thing, that is the problem, because Primed Sure-Footed is a mod that exists. Okay? Primed Sure-Footed is a mod that exists, and that has become mandatory on every single endgame build, because with this, you remove self-stagger. If you have this mod, you don't get the self-stagger from AoE weapons, which means that AoE weapons have no drawback. They have no drawback compared to other weapons in the game. You know what the drawback is with a single target weapon? The drawback is that it's a single target weapon. You can only kill one enemy at a time. You know what the drawback is with melee weapons? Range. You have to get close to the enemies to kill them. The drawback with AoE weapons, with big explodey weapons, used to be that there was a risk that you could kill yourself if you did a bad aim and shot at the ground or stood too close to the explosions. But now that they've removed self-damage, and if you've played the game for more than 400 days, or more than 400 login days, and you have Primed Sure-Footed, they have also removed self-stagger from the game. That doesn't exist either. So, there are no drawbacks to using AoE weapons. And that is what makes them dominant where nothing else is viable in comparison. They're just always going to be better than any other option. There's no reason to play otherwise. Or just having any other strategy. That's a problem. That is a problem from a design perspective, because then you make all of these single target weapons and they're just collecting dust. No one is ever going to play them, because why would they? So, a better solution back then would have been to mitigate it. You know, if people think that it's a problem that you die too often with self-damage, then mitigate it. Look at ways of making it so that it's not as punishing, but still be there. Like shield gating. Shield gating didn't exist back when they removed self-damage. Shield gating was something that was added to the game later. So now we already have a sort of protection inherent in the game with shield gating. That you can't one-shot yourself with AoE attacks the way you could before. But that didn't exist then. But they're looking at it now, and what they're talking about is not bringing back self-damage as it were, but bringing back a different version of self-damage. One that has damage mitigation, one that has protections in place, so that you can't one-shot yourself with it. Now, I am not sure. We'll see. We'll see if this is enough or not, because it could just be that this is also too cautious of an approach, to where if self-damage comes back but you can't one-shot yourself, and you can still sort of just use shield gating to survive forever, then it might not actually change anything in practice. I don't think so, though. I think it's too many damage instances, both from yourself and from enemies, to where I don't think you're going to be able to maintain shield gating if you just like go around and shooting things brainlessly and just not caring if you hit yourself with it at all. I don't think so. And that's kind of what I'm coming back to here, brainlessly. That is how you were able, or how you are able to play with AoE weapons today. You don't have to think about what you're doing. The gameplay is automated. You don't have to aim. You can kind of just look at the minimap and see where the little red dots are and aim roughly in that direction. But you don't have to aim. You don't have to think about what you're doing. You don't have to have any skill. Honestly, you don't have to have any skill anymore when you play Warframe. Just get a big explodey weapon, just run around and shoot at the ground and complete the mission. And we've also had like just power creep and power creep and power creep. We used to have a melee meta before instead of an AoE meta. And then they to fix that, they just made guns way more powerful than they were before. They added the galvanized mods to the game. They added the primary arcanes to the game. They didn't exist before. And suddenly, guns were just super powerful. And then it's like, we had the steel path. Well, steel path came before, but still. And it's like, more enemy spawns, big, huge hordes of enemies. And suddenly it's like, using an AoE weapon is the only viable thing to do, because a single target weapon can't kill things fast enough, like in the steel path. But if you look at what that is, right? You have a game that in many ways sort of plays itself when you reach high enough levels, high enough gear, high enough in your mods and loadouts and stuff. The game starts playing itself. So you have a game that plays itself with minimal input from you, less input from you the further in the game you reach, and where the objective is not to sort of improve gameplay or anything like that, but the objection is just to make a number grow on the screen. You can kill higher level enemies, your weapons can do more damage, you get bigger number and make big number see on eye, make feel good, make serotonin happy. So you work toward getting a bigger number on your screen and the game plays itself. You know what we call that? You know what type of game that is? That is called a cookie clicker. That is what that is. And that is why many people are saying that this current AoE meta that we are in Warframe right now is one of the worst metas. that this game has ever seen. Because we are in a cookie clicker meta, where just skill and actually like becoming good at the game, and not just good at manipulating the game systems, but actually good at playing the game. It's not like really a priority anymore. And that's not my Warframe. That's not what the game was like when I started playing it. It's not what I want Warframe to be either. I don't want Warframe to be a cookie clicker. I don't want it to be a horde shooter. I think Warframe was a more fun game when we had less power, we couldn't kill things as fast, and there were fewer enemies on the screen. I actually thought that was a more fun gameplay experience. But why are we looking at this again? Why are we looking at AoE again? Well, they said that they were going to do the first changes to ammo and blast radius, and they were going to see what effect it had. And obviously, this was not successful. Obviously, it did not have the impact on the meta that they were hoping it was gonna have. AoE weapons are still the only viable strategy, and they're still far superior to anything else. The only thing that happened was the dominance of Kuva Ogris, Kuva Brahma, and Kuva Zar. That was broken. Those three weapons are not really as viable anymore as they used to be. But there are a lot of other ones. You have the Kuva Tankor. That's still good. You have the Exceltra. That's still good. You have the Bubonico. That's still good. Yeah, like the list goes on and on. The Incarnon weapons, they're the class of themselves, and they're powerful, but they're not exactly AoE, but they're a bit AoE inspired, I guess. But they're still super powerful as well. There's a bunch of stuff you can play with, like the Tenet Tetra. That's still good. The Proboscis Cernos, I haven't tried that one. I know that one, look at that, ammo maximum from 96 down to 7. That's a precision strike. But the Proboscis Cernos was also kind of busted and way too good. I'm gonna guess that like the Spore Laser, that's still good. Especially just went from 96 down to 60. I'm gonna say that one's still pretty goddamn powerful. So people are just gravitating toward other weapons instead. But AoE is still the name of the game. So yeah, further tweaks. And then people are like, well, why do you care? It's a PvE game. If you don't like it, if you don't like the disruption of other people playing with their boom weapons, then leave me alone. Why don't you just go play solo and I can continue having fun with my boom weapons? Hey, I have a counter question, okay? If you're so dominant with this, and you just kill everything anyway in every mission, and you don't need the rest of the squad, why don't you go play solo, right? Why don't you go play solo with your AoE weapon, and then everyone else can have fun? Because it's not about that, right? It's because you want to play in a team, because it's fun to play in a team. Well, what if it was fun for everyone, and not just for you, right? What if that was a thing? No, I think removing self-damage from the game was a mistake. And I think it was not the proper solution to the problems introduced with the Kuva Brahma. They should have tweaked how self-damage works, but they should not have just completely removed it from the game. I think it turned Warframe into something it shouldn't be. I think the game is different now from what it used to be before this change. And I think it's not for the better. We used to have an ecology of different things that were viable for different reasons. Melee weapons were viable for some situations. Single target weapons were viable for some situations. And AoE weapons were viable for some situations, but not all. With this change, suddenly, AoE weapons top every single category. They are the best choice no matter what you do. And that is that is bad from a design standpoint. Like, when was the last time you even equipped, like, a sniper rifle for anything outside of Eidolons? You wouldn't. They have no place in the game anymore, except specifically for Eidolons. They used to have a place in the game, when we didn't have 500 enemies on the screen at the same time, and you had to be able to kill all 500 at the same time to keep up. But now it's like, why would anyone use a sniper rifle? Why are they even in the game, right? They were created in a different era when Warframe was something different that I would like it to go back to. And adding self-damage back into the game is actually like a way there. So those are sort of like my reasons for why self-damage should be added back into the game. Number 1, it is less disruptive to other players. Number 2, it would increase build diversity and actually sort of like have a real impact on the meta of this game, and just make it so that different things would be viable for different scenarios. Number 3, and this is the big one, this is the really, really big one, it would make Warframe a more fun game. Yes, it would make Warframe a more fun game for you too, you who are using these big boom boom blast weapons. You might not think it today, because it sounds like, oh, this is gonna be a negative experience for me. I am sometimes going to kill myself. I don't like that. And this is like the bitter pill, right? This is like, take your medicine. If you... Like, Warframe is a more fun game when it actually tests your skill a little bit, when it presents a bit of a challenge. Playing without any challenge whatsoever and just having Warframe be a cooker-clicker game, that might be some people's cup of tea, but I think you would be surprised with just how it feels to get rewarded for your skill at the game, rather than just get rewarded for your ability to manipulate the systems of the game. Which anyone can do. You just go read up on a wiki, see what the meta is, slot in all of the correct mods, and use the correct abilities, and then the game just plays itself. That doesn't require skill. Actually aiming your weapons, actually paying attention to what you're doing, and feeling like you are accomplishing something by it, that the game rewards you for playing the game correctly, that is also a source of enjoyment that make feel good. That's why I like the Eximus rework. Like, for example, an energy leech Eximus, where it used to be just, oh, if you stand close to it, it starts draining your energy. So you're just supposed to kill it immediately and just not pay attention. Where now, instead, it's like, yeah, it puts a thing on the ground. If you can avoid the thing on the ground, you won't get hit by the negative effect. And suddenly it's skill testing. Suddenly, the game rewards you for actually playing the game right and paying attention to what you're doing. And that's good. That makes for a more enjoyable experience. It creates more engagement with the game. That's what I want. I want you to feel like you're rewarded for engaging with the game. Now you're rewarded for not engaging with the game. You're rewarded for having an AFK playstyle. An automated playstyle where you're barely paying attention and your inputs have like a minimal effect on what's happening. That's not good. So, I'm telling you now, the first dev stream, they were like, oh, we got this in the back pocket. This dev stream, they're saying, well, it might come back, and here are how we are envisioning it coming back in that case. And listing some pretty detailed explanations for, like, different tweaks and parameters and stuff they're working on. You know what this tells me? This tells me that this is already set in stone. It is coming back. The plan has been for it to come back for quite some time now, and they are just slowly but surely warming the community up to that idea so that when it happens, it doesn't come out of nowhere. But I'm telling you right here, you heard it here first, people. So, there is no maybe. There is no maybe. Self-damage is coming back to the game. 100%. It's happening. And I'm happy about it. I'm really happy about it. I look forward to it. Can't wait. Self-damage should have never been removed from the game in the first place. That was a mistake. And with the new dev team, with Reb at the helm and with Pablo tweaking these things, I am very happy to see that they are willing to go back and change like stuff that's been in the game for many years. Not just leaving things as they are, but actually going back and addressing things that weren't necessarily like proper solutions to problems that were presented before. That we're going back and looking at the actual foundation of the game itself. Very happy that they seem to be brave enough for that, and just it's a courageous approach, and it shows a lot of like motivation and ambition. I'm super positive about that. So this is going to be for the good of the game, people. Self-damage is coming back, 100% guaranteed. And it's gonna be good for the game. It's gonna make Warframe a better game. It's gonna take some getting used to. People are gonna be complaining in the beginning. People are gonna be pissed when it comes because no one likes change and no one likes anything that can be sort of interpreted as being a nerf. There's gonna be pushback. And I hope that the devs are just gonna ride it out. Let people be angry, let people be pissy about it for a while, let people review bomb it on Steam or whatever. Just ride it out, have faith in what they're doing, stick to their guns, and like half a year later, people are gonna look back at it and be like, oh, I always wanted self-damage to come back. Because that's what people are like, right? They never admit that they were wrong, but they're like, we're going to have a healthier meta. We are absolutely going to have a healthier meta. It's just going to take some getting used to, but it will be for the good of the game. Absolutely will be. So, that's my take. That's my take. If you're one of those people who absolutely does not want self-damage to come back, then, well, I'm sorry, but it is coming back. But you can leave a comment, explain why you think that would be a mistake. Or if you're just like cautiously optimistic about it and stuff, you can explain why you think it's a good idea for it to come back. Either way, you're leaving a comment on this video, which is good for my channel. So do that. Give me that juicy sweet engagement. Hit that like button as well. Hit the subscribe button as well if you haven't done it. Do it. Hit all the buttons. Hit the bell. I don't even know what that does, but hit it anyway. Do all the things. My wife is staring at me right now. She's like, we're not supposed to do that on this channel, Nick. She's right. We're not supposed to do that on this channel. And so I guess I'll just cut off here, right? Before I embarrass myself even further. Thanks for listening to my little rant here. We just gotta control the narrative, people. I know there's other content creators out there who are already making the videos about self-damage is coming back, and this is why you should be upset about it. They're ruining the game again. They're gonna ruin your favorite build, and now you should get angry because you get so much engagement from just feeding into that sort of stuff. But nah, people, not here. That's not what we're up to. That's not what 2-star players is all about. We are gonna be level-headed. We're gonna be optimistic because that's what we're always like here, right? It's more enjoyable in the long run, better for your mental health. So, thanks for watching, and I will see you again tomorrow for something completely different.